Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up as Kingpin inside of DC. What is Kingpin gonna do inside of Gotham? How is he gonna change DC?
DC, what if I am Kingpin in Gotham? Chapter 1, Cold Light, Wrong World. It didn't hurt. That was the first thing I noticed. There was no pain, not at the end, just headlights too fast to flinch, then darkness, and now this. The light overhead buzzed like it was trying too hard to exist. Cold, sterile, fluorescent. I blinked once. My body felt heavy, weighted, but not sluggish. No stiffness in the joints, no weakness in the limbs. In fact, there was a kind of power radiating under my skin, tightly coiled, efficient, clean. I inhaled. The breath hit the bottom of my lungs like an elevator cable snapping mid-descent. I was alive, but I wasn't me. I sat up slowly. The floor creaked under my weight, marble by the sound of it, and the way it cracked slightly beneath the stress. I was in a high-rise apartment, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows and thick, soundproof walls. Manhattan, maybe. The skyline could have passed for it, at a glance, but I hadn't seen it clearly yet. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. A sleek black device, screen already lit with updates. No lock screen, no biometrics. It just opened like it expected me. I picked it up, thumb nearly the size of the whole width of the screen. That was when I saw my reflection in the glass. Broad, pale, bold. Wilson Fisk. I didn't panic, that wasn't my nature. But I breathed in deep and slow, grounding myself in the impossible. Reborn again. This time not as some random civilian, not as a shinobi, not as a soldier, not some no-name to hide behind. I was him, Kingpin, the most dangerous man in New York. I tapped into the browser. My fingers weren't used to the size, neither the phone's nor mine, but muscle memory adapted. I typed, Avengers, then Tony Stark, then Spider-Man. The results loaded. Nothing. No Stark Industries, no Iron Man, no Midtown High School, no Sokovia Accords, no Battle of New York. I paused, my jaw tightened. This didn't make sense. I leaned forward, scrolling through the headlines. The world was not unfamiliar, but it was wrong. A name caught my eye, one I had never expected to see here. Gotham City mourns, as Batman foils Arkham escape, again. My thumb stopped cold. I stared at the headline, blinked, searched again. Bruce Wayne, then Justice League, then Clark Kent. Every result confirmed it. I wasn't in the Marvel universe. I was in DC. I stood up. The floor cracked louder this time. My weight was easily 400 pounds, more muscle than fat, but still enough mass to strain lesser materials. I turned to the window, stepped forward, and pulled the curtains aside. Not Manhattan. The skyline was different, more Gothic. Fewer glass towers, more spires and gargoyles, clocks, bats. Gotham. The phone vibrated again. An email this time. My name, Wilson Fisk, was in the header. A message from a law firm. Something about a negotiation window with SDAR Labs. Legalese, vague, but one word jumped out. LexCorp. I scrolled through the inbox. My business, my assets. I wasn't some displaced body without grounding. This version of Kingpin was established. I turned back to the room. Clean, elegant, no mirrors except the one in the bathroom, no decorations, sparse furniture, not a home, just a fortress. I sat again, slowly, carefully, letting the structure hold my weight. My mind ran cold calculations. This was not just a misplacement. This was a trap, or an opportunity, depending on how I played it. I had Kingpin's body, his reputation, his money, his networks, but I was no longer on a board I understood. I was up against different powers. The cosmic balance was wrong. There were no mutants, no SHIELD, no daredevil to annoy me in alleyways. Instead, there were gods, Kryptonians, speedsters, lanterns, and the man who watched everything from the shadows, in a cape and cowl. Batman. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and tapped the phone once more. I searched Batman's known enemies. The list was long, but I wasn't on it. Not yet. Chapter 2. Promises Beneath the Surface. I wore the suit like a skin, perfectly tailored. The weight of it didn't slow me, it balanced me. The vest hugged my ribs, the coat stretched clean across my shoulders, and the cane, though I didn't need it, clicked against the marble tile with deliberate cadence. My assistant, a younger man named Hammond with smooth speech and polished mannerisms, walked 3 steps behind. He didn't ask questions. I didn't offer explanations. Wayne Tower rose like a blade through the city's ribcage. Not sleek like Stark's monstrosity, but older, heavier, built in a different century for a different war. The lobby was wood-paneled and quiet, the light softened by antique brass fixtures. The receptionist stood when I approached. I didn't speak. I let the silence do the work. "Mr. Fisk," she said, flinching slightly when her eyes reached mine. "Mr. Wayne will see you. Top floor." Hammond stayed behind. He knew what this was. Power didn't share a table. It interrogated. The elevator walls were mirrored steel. I studied the reflection without blinking, not out of vanity. I needed to know exactly what he'd see. Wilson Fisk's face was unreadable. The elevator opened directly into a private office, glass-walled, bookshelves built into stone, quiet as a monastery. I stepped out and scanned it instinctively. 2 exits. One high camera in the corner, black dot embedded in wood grain. The man behind the desk didn't rise. Bruce Wayne. He was younger than I expected. Not in years, but in weight. No arrogance. No pretension. He looked like someone who hadn't slept, who didn't care what anyone thought, but who watched and never forgot. "Mr. Fisk," he said, his voice low but even, "I've read your file." I didn't sit yet. There are many files on me, most of them written by men who failed. He watched me without blinking, then gestured to the chair. "Let's find out what kind of man you are." I sat, slowly, no rush. The weight of my frame folded into the chair like a deliberate threat. I set the cane against the desk. "I came to Gotham because your city is bleeding," I said, "and no one's applying pressure." Bruce said nothing. I continued. "You've inherited a legacy of philanthropy, foundations, hospitals, shelters, but none of it works. You pour in billions and still the gutters flood with blood." He leaned forward slightly. "I'm aware. I'm not here to sell you a dream," I said. "I'm here to buy your partnership. I want your company's support, your board's influence, your platform." "And what exactly do you want to do with it?" he asked. "I want to become mayor of Gotham." He didn't flinch, but the silence around him changed, thicker. I went on. "Not a campaign stunt, not a figurehead. I want full operational authority, law enforcement, infrastructure, budget control. And I want Wayne Enterprises' public backing." He tapped his fingers once against the desk, then leaned back. "You're not a citizen of Gotham. You have no political background. Your file includes racketeering investigations, financial irregularities, and suspected connections to organized crime." "All true," I said calmly, "but irrelevant. I haven't been convicted. I've donated more to youth housing initiatives in the last 6 months than your city council has passed in a year. And I've brought crime rates to single digits in districts that used to be declared no-go zones. And you want me to endorse you?" "I want you to understand this city the way I do," I said. "Gotham is a wound. You're treating it like a patient. I will cauterize it." He stood, walked to the window, looked out. The skyline behind him made his outline hard to read. "Gotham doesn't respond to force," he said. "The last man who tried that wore a mask and called himself Salvation. People died. I won't wear a mask." "You won't need one," he said. "You're already hiding behind a name." I rose. The chair creaked as it returned upright. "You fought criminals one by one," I said. "I won't. I'll make it impossible for them to breathe. I'll shut down their supply chains, seize their accounts, flip their lieutenants, and tax their blood dry until they're too broke to kill anyone. His voice was softer. And what do you want in return? I paused, let him feel the weight of my next words. Legacy, I said. Not mine, yours. He turned. That got through. You want to use my name. I want Gotham to remember that Bruce Wayne chose peace over pride. The silence stretched. Then he walked to the side cabinet, poured 2 glasses of water, handed me one. You're serious, he said. I nodded once. He stared at me for a long time. The quiet wasn't cold, it was forensic. Let's say I agree, he said. What does a Fisk administration look like? Enforced curfews in high-risk zones, I said. Targeted economic relief for low-income districts, redevelopment of Narrows and East End. We flood the streets with employment contracts, construction jobs, and real schooling. But more than that, fear. Of you. Of consequence. He sipped his water, never looking away. You're not a reformer, you're a controller. I'm an administrator, I said, with results. And when people push back, they won't, I said, because by the time they realize what I've done, the crime will be gone. No one mourns a fire once the smoke clears. He exhaled slowly. You're going to force the underworld to kneel. I'm going to make them choose, I said, compliance or extinction. His voice dropped slightly. You're going to kill people. Not with my hands. That doesn't absolve you. I didn't answer. We stood in the echo of that sentence. Then he said, the last mayor was assassinated. I nodded. That won't happen to me. You think you're untouchable. I think I'm more useful alive. He set the glass down, walked back to his desk, sat. You'll be opposed by every elite in the city. The press will try to tear you down. I'll own the press by the end of the quarter. There will be resistance. There always is. He didn't smile, but something flickered in his eyes, a recognition. You have the money, he said. You have the muscle, but you won't win unless people believe you want to help them. I will help them, I said. I just won't ask permission first. Another pause. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Wayne Enterprises won't give public backing. Not yet. I nodded. That's fair. But we will grant access to our urban redevelopment subsidiary. Conditional oversight. You propose a plan for East End and Park Row. We'll assign our people to monitor progress. You want insurance. I want proof, he said. And if you try to weaponize this city, you'll stop me, I finished. He didn't deny it. I accept, I said. He stood again. Then we begin tomorrow. I turned to go, then paused. One more thing. He looked up. Don't send anyone after me in a mask. If you have something to say, come yourself. His expression didn't shift. I always do. I left. The elevator closed behind me like the lid on a casket. The ride down was silent. When the doors opened to the lobby, Hammond stood waiting, phone in hand. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected, I said. Do we proceed with the campaign announcement? No, not yet. We start with East End. Quietly. Bring in the teams. Use Wayne's redevelopment contacts to move fast. I want before and after footage within 90 days. And the gangs. Start flipping lieutenants. Anyone on parole gets offered job placement through one of our shell corporations. Make it look like a private initiative. Make it look generous. Understood. We stepped into the car. Outside, Gotham looked the same. Cold, wounded, cracked with poverty and desperation, but I saw the angles already. Wayne wanted proof. He would get it. And by the time he realized what I'd built, brick by brick, this city would belong to me. Not by blood, not by violence, but by order. and no one would take it back. Chapter 3: Foundations in Stone. The morning light filtered through the blinds in harsh vertical slats, thick with the pollution that clung to Gotham like smoke from an old war that never ended. I stood alone in the penthouse, the silence absolute. No staff yet, no Hammond, no guards, just me. The room was large and cold, unlived in. I hadn't touched the kitchen. I hadn't slept in the bed. Everything was functional, like a safe house masquerading as luxury. I didn't decorate, I occupied. I opened the laptop and connected to the private line. Encrypted, routed through 6 layers of offshore relays. My hands moved with mechanical certainty, typing codes, verifying credentials, bypassing soft firewalls. Every protection was in place, but I didn't trust them, not in this city. The account loaded. $872,329,612. Liquid. Ready. Another $600 million in property, shell accounts, and art assets across 6 countries. Kingpin had come with weight, but in this world, he was heavier. I didn't smile. There was nothing to celebrate. Money was just a tool, a lever, and Gotham was nothing but locked gates waiting to be pried open. I tapped into the city registrar, real estate auctions, foreclosures, unsold industrial zones. The East End was collapsing, no tax revenue, no political defenders. The city was practically begging someone to buy it off its books. I selected 7 blocks, 2 along the Tricorner floodplain, perfect for vertical agriculture and logistics, 3 clustered near Harlow, and 7, ideal for low-income redevelopment with controlled transit corridors, and 2 more right along the north edge of the Narrows, where the GCPD response times were longest. The bids were placed, quietly, through dummy corporations, each with clean books and philanthropic mission statements. A homeless shelter front in Boston, a medical non-profit in Bloodhaven. None of it would lead back to Fisk until I wanted it to. By the time the city clerk's office opened, I owned more of Gotham's underused property than half the council combined. I picked up the phone and called Hammond. "Sir," he answered instantly. "Pull in the design firms. I want 7 build crews on rotation by week's end. Schools, housing, mixed zoning. We'll copy the riverfront model from Queens, but cleaner. Strip out the green space and add more vertical access. Minimum capacity, 500 units per block." He didn't miss a beat. Understood. What about oversight? Let Wayne think he's watching. We'll hand him blueprints for review and let Lucius run audits, but nothing with teeth. The real funding will come from shell donors. I want these buildings up before the press can figure out who to hate. And the contractors. No unions, not yet. Subcontract out to veterans, parolees, and displaced workers. Anyone clean enough for a camera crew, but desperate enough to work fast. Noted. I ended the call. Construction would take weeks, but power didn't wait. I opened a separate channel, encrypted, private, older than the bank's software. The name on the contact list was someone from the shadows of Fisk's world, an import broker who handled weapons, personnel, intelligence. In Marvel, he'd be nothing more than a name in Daredevil's case files. In Gotham, he'd be invisible. I dialed. "Mr. Fisk," the voice answered, Slavic calm. "We weren't sure you still needed our services." "I need eyes," I said. "Every crew, every dealer, every runner, every fixer. I want names, movements, known hideouts, suspected payrolls. I want sources in GCPD, Arkham, and the DA's office." "And your budget?" "There isn't one. I'll pay triple market for verified intel, 5 times for clean footage or hard copies, and I want the first list in my inbox before midnight." A pause. "That's a lot of ground to cover." "Then get more men." "Yes, sir." I ended the call. Information was the only power worth hoarding. Not money, not muscle. I already knew how this would go. I'd spent years watching how these cities worked. The underworld was proud, territorial, but none of them saw the knife coming until it was already in their spine. By midday, my mercenaries began reporting in. They weren't in Gotham yet, but I'd already started moving them. Foreign operatives, ex-military, disavowed assets, not obvious enough to look like an army, but smart enough to keep quiet. They'd arrive through civilian shipping channels, some as private security consultants, others as embassy staff or NGO contractors. I'd filed their papers 2 weeks ago, backdated, official. I had dossiers waiting, not on heroes, not yet, but on the city's vermin. Oswald Cobblepot, Jervis Tetch, Roman Sionis, Victor Zas. Each one had connections, safe houses, routines. None of them had felt pressure in years. I'd apply it precisely, quietly. By evening, the construction contracts were drafted. I reviewed them line by line, every clause, every safety check, liability waiver, budget window. I rewrote the oversight conditions myself, tightening payment schedules, narrowing accountability, burying arbitration clauses beneath 6 layers of legal deadweight. Then I signed. 7 documents, 1 for each project. The pen didn't slip once. When Hammond returned that night, he stood in the doorway holding the printed filings, freshly sealed. "It's done," he said. "Land's yours, permits in place. The city waived the inspections on 3 of the sites. They want fast results." "Good." He hesitated. "Sir, we've had 4 tail attempts today." "Police." "Couldn't confirm. Might be private surveillance, or Cobblepot." "Let them watch." He nodded. "And the intel team?" I asked. He handed me a tablet. The files were organized. Drug movement in the Narrows had dropped 8% in the last 72 hours. The Iceberg Lounge had shifted 3 of its regular shipments inland, rerouting from Tricorner to Amusement Mile. Cobblepot was feeling pressure. But more than that, something else was happening. The GCPD's Organized Crime Division had moved 2 undercover detectives into East End. Too fast, too early. Wayne hadn't told me. He was watching already. I sat down and read through the names. Mercenaries were already charting low-level lieutenants. 2 of the Maroni holdovers had flipped. One was hiding in an abandoned bank downtown. The other had been quietly working as a city sanitation driver, laundering cash through government pensions. Both were valuable, but not yet useful. I tapped Hammond. "Send a message to Penguin. Quiet. I want a meeting. Tell him I'm buying up the city and I'm feeling generous." He blinked once. "You want to talk to him?" "No, I want him to talk to me." "And if he refuses?" I looked down at the map on the tablet. 7 red zones, 6 factions, 1 city. "He won't." Because he'd already lost. Chapter 4. Offer made in silence. The room was dark when I returned to it. Not out of oversight. Nothing in my life had ever been accidental. Darkness kept the glass of the penthouse from reflecting too much. Light could betray you. Reflection made you visible. I left the windows untouched and waited for the skyline to press in like fog. Gotham's night was different from New York's. Dirtier, more ancient. It wasn't alive the way Hell's Kitchen had been. It was tired, drenched in decades of unresolved rot. You could feel it in the wind, the way it moved differently at street level, like it curled to avoid certain buildings. The city remembered where the blood had dried. Hammond returned quietly, as always. He set the small black case on the table between us without speaking. The latch was already open. Inside, a burner phone, already active and connected. "He accepted?" I asked. Hammond nodded. 10 minutes. He said he wants it private. Of course he did. I reached down and lifted the phone. The speaker crackled once. A sharp intake of breath on the other side. Then silence. Not out of hesitation, not uncertainty. It was the same silence men like me used. Men like him, measuring the other's breathing. Finally, his voice came. I don't like being summoned. Then think of this as a transaction, I said calmly. You're not a man who can afford to ignore opportunity. Another silence, shorter, less cautious. He was here to test me. Say what you came to say, Fisk. I'm buying Gotham, I said. Piece by piece, the bones, the bricks, the permits. And I don't intend to make enemies unless they insist. And I'm supposed to guess which one I am. You're someone with influence, I said. That makes you a variable. I don't like variables. A soft, wet cough, then a breathy chuckle. I don't like threats. That wasn't one. Could have fooled me. He hung up, the line cut clean. Hammond looked at me, waiting. I stood. Prepare the meeting room. No guards, no surveillance. He'll come. You're sure? He's Penguin. He can't resist leverage. We didn't meet in the penthouse. That would have been a declaration. Instead, I chose a development site on the south edge of the East End. Bare concrete, steel beams, no walls yet. Just the frame of a building that didn't exist. The wind cut through the girders and whistled along the unfinished scaffolding. We waited on the second level, beneath open sky. A single bulb on a hanging cable gave just enough light to read a man's face, but not his thoughts. He arrived 37 minutes late. Not unusual, not personal. Men like Cobblepot didn't arrive on time unless they meant to offend. The car was black, unremarkable, armored under the paint. He exited without ceremony, thick coat, crooked umbrella, hat pulled low. His gait was odd, not from injury, from pride. Two men followed behind him, not bodyguards, display pieces. Scarred, quiet, carrying weapons under coats too small for concealment. He stepped forward and gave me one glance before speaking. You really are that big? I didn't answer. He moved closer, pacing slowly along the wet concrete, taking in the exposed rebar and steel bolts. This place yours? All of it. He nodded, squinting. You're building something fast. No permits posted. No inspection logs. I have both. Then you're paying off the right people. I waited. He turned to me again. So tell me, Fisk, you're buying land, hiring workers, building towers. What do you want from me? I want a name, I said. Yours, attached to peace. I want it known that the East End belongs to me and that you've chosen not to interfere. You think that matters? To everyone watching, yes. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. And if I say no? I stepped forward once. The beam under my foot groaned slightly. Then I'll take it anyway. And the only thing people will remember is that I did it after you refused. One of his men shifted slightly. The wind caught his coat. Cobblepot didn't blink. You're bold. I'm efficient. You've got money, that much is obvious. But this city isn't just for sale. It fights back. I'm counting on it, I said, because the ones who don't fight, they're useless. I'd rather know who matters. He moved closer, within 5 feet now. His eyes were small and pale, but they didn't dart. They stayed locked on mine. I've been here longer than most, he said. I've watched Maroni bleed out in alleys. I've seen Falcon cut to pieces by his own. You think I'm going to hand over my corner just because a bigger dog showed up? You'll hand it over, I said, because your shipments are being delayed, because your dealers are being flipped, because I'm already in your operation and you haven't figured out where yet. His left eye twitched, barely, but I saw it. I stepped forward again, now 3 feet apart. I'm not asking you to bow. I'm offering something else. He tilted his head, skeptical. Which is? Stability, a ceasefire. You focus on the iceberg lounge, on black market goods. I won't interfere with your clubs, your gambling, your soft trafficking, so long as you stay out of my districts. And if someone breaks the truce, then I erase them, quietly, permanently. He grunted, and you'll leave me be. As long as I'm not provoked. He paced back 2 steps, pulled a cigar from his coat, lit it with a flick that shielded the flame from the wind. The smoke curled around his mouth like fog. "You're trying to run this city like a business." "It is a business." "And the cops. Already watching," I said, "and learning who not to touch." He thought for a while. The wind picked up. One of his men shifted again. Still no one spoke. Then he nodded once. "East End's yours, for now. I'll have it in writing." He smiled. "Of course you will." He turned to leave, then paused. "You're going to make enemies, Fisk. Real ones. The kind that don't sleep. The kind that wear masks." "I know. And what happens when one of them puts a boot on your throat?" I looked down at him. "They'll learn I don't kneel." He gave a single bark of laughter, then walked to the car. His men followed, the doors shut. The engine didn't roar, it whispered, expensive, shielded, designed not to wake neighbors. When they were gone, I turned to Hammond, who had stood in the shadows the whole time. "Did we record?" "No, per your orders." "Good," I said. He wouldn't have spoken otherwise. "Should I draft the agreement?" "Yes, simple language. 2 pages. No legal padding. Make it look like something passed between men, not lawyers." "And the press?" "Nothing yet," I said. "Let him spread it first. He'll brag, that's the point. His people trust him. If they see him aligning with us, the street will follow." Hammond nodded and stepped away. I stayed, just for a moment. Above me, the stars were gone, hidden by Gotham's low clouds and industrial smoke. The frame of the tower was cold under my hand. I had my first piece, the first real one. The East End would hold, not because I threatened it, but because I arranged it, quietly, with words. And tomorrow I would do it again. Chapter 5. Blood Beneath the Concrete. 3 days. That was how long the truce lasted. Long enough for my first shipment of construction steel to arrive from Metropolis. Long enough for my labor teams to break ground on 2 of the 7 sites. Long enough for Wayne Enterprises, subcontractors, to walk the edge of the work zone with quiet suspicion but no interference. Long enough for the media to start sniffing the edges of something new, something large, moving through East End like a rumor people wanted to believe. 3 days, then the first body showed up. It was early morning when Hammond handed me the photo, printed on matte paper, not sent digitally. That was a message in itself. He knew what I would and wouldn't allow to live in the cloud. The image was crisp, high angle, black and white. Male, mid-30s, 1 shoe missing, throat cut from behind, dumped directly in the construction yard on Block 3. My site. "Name?" I asked. "Raymond Kess," Hammond replied. "Local, small-time distributor working under Red Face." Red Face answers to Cobblepot. Hammond nodded. I turn the photo over and read the crime scene summary. No witnesses, no security footage. The GCPD had already tagged it as gang-related, no further investigation pending. Typical, predictable. Intentional. "I want his route reconstructed," I said. "Last 24 hours, and I want to know who delivered the body." "Already in progress, but—" "But what?" Hammond hesitated. Then, we picked up chatter off one of Cobblepot's runners, not one of ours, just open-line bar talk. Apparently, Penguin's calling it a message. My fingers tightened against the table edge. The pressure made the wood creak beneath my grip. Not a threat, not yet, but a violation, a test. "I want him reminded of our arrangement," I said, "and I want the reply sent back through his channels, not ours. Let his own people carry it." "Yes, sir." But that wasn't enough. The concrete of East End was still wet under the boots of my crews. I didn't have time for symbolic strikes. Not with Wayne watching. Not with the mayoral groundwork beginning to take shape in the shadows. Not with the councilmen whispering in their penthouses about the sudden drop in street violence since my presence had begun to spread. I needed to respond with precision, with a move too clean to provoke open retaliation, but deep enough to cause pain. The kind of pain that taught lessons. The kind of pain Penguin would feel. I reached for the secure line and called Anton. He picked up on the second ring. Serbian, calm, reliable. I need eyes on the iceberg lounge, I said. Tonight, no contact, just documentation. I want a full list of who comes and goes. Affiliates, lieutenants, security rotation, blind spots. I want to know how Cobblepot walks from his car to his chair and who pours his drink. Understood. Do not be seen. Of course. I ended the call, leaned back in my chair. Gotham was testing me. That wasn't a surprise. What mattered was how I answered. By nightfall, the fog had settled over the Narrows, thick and low, crawling like mildew across the broken skyline. Hammond had relocated our operations hub to a commercial unit above a shuttered strip club 2 blocks from the construction sites. Clean, secure, no windows. We blacked out the building's electricity and run power-off generators in the basement. No one uninvited could find us. I read the field report twice. Raymond Kess had been seen entering the iceberg lounge the night before. He argued with someone in the back corridor. Witnesses said he left alone. 4 hours later, he was found dead in my zone. His death had weight, intent. But more importantly, Penguin had let the body be placed. That took planning, confidence, which meant he thought I wouldn't act. He was wrong. I tapped the table 3 times, a signal. Hammond opened the secure case beside him. Inside, a plain, thick envelope, pre-packed, marked with nothing but an inked circle on the front, the kind of thing that traveled across underworld hands without comment. Inside were photos, financials, names, evidence of one of Cobblepot's lieutenants laundering casino cash through a false front rehabilitation clinic. Not illegal on paper, but dirty enough to matter. Send this through the Maroni line, I said. Tell them Penguin S bleeding them. Let it land in the right hands. Hammond nodded. What about physical response? He asked. You want to send a crew? I shook my head. Not yet. Why not? Because he expects it, and I won't give him what he expects. 2 nights later, I was back at the construction site, Block 3, the murder site. It hadn't been cleaned yet. I'd ordered the delay personally. I wanted the scent to linger. The smell of blood wasn't metaphorical. It was chemical, memorable. I stood over the stain. It was darker now, almost black. The concrete around it still faintly discolored where the rain hadn't washed through. I didn't speak. Beside me, the foreman, an older man named Jacques, fidgeted. He wasn't used to this kind of oversight. Sir, we can pressure wash it tonight. Get the rest of the crew back on. Leave it. He fell silent. He didn't understand, but he obeyed. The wind rolled through the beams and open corridors. I heard sirens in the distance. They never came this far. No one expected them to. Penguin wanted the public to see. A body dumped on my project, an unspoken challenge. The kind of move street bosses respected, but he hadn't realized what else it signaled. It showed that he felt insecure. He was asserting presence in a territory that no longer feared him. That meant he was already losing. Later that night, Anton called again. I have what you asked for. Speak. He enters through the west garage. 5 security men, 1 in front, 4 in the club, private corridor to the office. 2 hidden cameras, low quality. No thermal, no noise sensors. Escape routes. None. Single path out through the corridor. Backup stairs blocked by old scaffolding. There's no alarm if he exits through the back, but it's welded shut. He's not planning for attack. He doesn't think you'll move. He was right. I wouldn't attack. Not yet. Good, I said. Prepare to deliver the next message. To who? His banker, quietly. Nothing traceable. Yes, sir. 3 hours later, Penguin's offshore account in Malta was flagged for audit by one of its own internal compliance officers. Someone on his books had been contacted, coaxed, paid. The report didn't go public, but Penguin would see the freeze. He would know. His response came the next day. A public interview with a minor crime reporter. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. He smiled, crooked, insincere, and talked about out-of-town investors trying to bully old friends. Said the city had room for many players, but that old families remember who really keeps Gotham stable. It was a warning, but not to me, to everyone else. That meant he was afraid. He would never admit it, but the old lines of power were shifting, and in this city, fear preceded loyalty. The moment his people sensed weakness, they'd start choosing. And I would be the only one offering structure. Back in the operations room, I stood over the city map. 7 zones, 3 active, 4 pending. I pointed to the Narrows. Next. Hammond looked up. The budget for that zone's not cleared yet. Clear it. And the resistance. I tapped the paper once. They've already lost. They just haven't felt it yet. Chapter 6, Pressure Split Stone. It started with gunfire. Not in my zones, just outside them. Smart. The Narrows was a different creature than East End. There were no straight streets, no civic layouts left intact. Everything folded in on itself like a wound that had healed badly. Housing blocks mashed into old factories, rooftops became transit corridors, alleyways served as both bedroom and burial ground. It was a graveyard of government failure. And it didn't belong to Penguin. It didn't belong to anyone. Which made it available. At first it was just chatter. That was expected. My people had stepped into the Narrows 2 days ago. No uniformed men, no shipments, just plainclothes surveyors with cameras, tape, and geomapping equipment. They moved quiet, used aliases, wore shoes with soft soles, but the city still felt them. Territory doesn't need walls. By the 3rd day, we were approached by a local contact, unofficial, unaffiliated, paranoid. He offered intel in exchange for synthetic morphine. We gave him half of what he asked and told him if he was alive next week, we'd double it. He came back with a map, hand-drawn, blood-stained. It showed which streets belonged to whom. Not official gangs, those were mostly scattered. These were looser, patch crews, family blocks, pop-up militias with no leadership but a consistent pattern. Don't cross this roof, don't sell on this corner, don't step into the shadows between 3:00 and 5:00 a.m. We matched his map to our satellite overlays. He was right. The patterns held. That was when the shooting started. Not near our sites, not directly in our jurisdiction, just enough to rattle windows. We lost 2 operatives in the first hour. Not killed, pulled, separated, stripped of equipment and dumped naked in an alley. The message was loud: stay out. Penguin's hand was all over it. He wouldn't dirty his own fingers. He didn't need to. He'd paid someone else to stir chaos. Give the appearance of instability, untraceable, no bullets to follow, no blood we could legally respond to. But I wasn't governed by legality. I stood in the operations room above our East End site, watching the footage Hammond had compiled from our short-range drones. The heat signatures from the Narrows showed clumped movements at dawn, mass dispersion by mid-morning, then rapid consolidation after nightfall. Whoever was organizing them knew when GCPD looked the other way. They're not random, Hammond said, pointing at the overlay. See that trail there? They're following the paths around our contractors. Not engaging, I asked. Not directly, just visible, shadowing, letting them know they're being watched. Disruption without confrontation, I said. Keeps them plausible, keeps GCPD hands off. Yes, sir. I nodded slowly. The tactics were Penguin-esque. He didn't think like that, but he had paid someone who did. They're using Narrows crews as proxy, I said. Probably paid in product, not cash. They'll burn out fast. And if they do, then we put them down, quietly, but not yet. Why not? Because the city is watching, I said. And Bruce Wayne hasn't made his move yet. I want him to see this chaos. I want him to compare it to East End. I want him to feel the difference. You think he'll respond? I know he will. The next morning, it escalated. A storage unit leased to one of my logistics fronts was firebombed. Not a large one, nothing catastrophic, but symbolic. It burned slow, no injuries, minimal loss, but the flames spread onto an adjacent building, city-owned. Abandoned, yes, but technically public property. That drew press. 3 reporters, 1 drone crew. They came expecting a headline about city neglect. Instead, they found order. Our contractors were already on site. Controlled perimeter. Fire response deployed from our own trucks. No panic, no police delay. The next morning, we woke up to a headline in the Gotham Tribune. Private sector outpaces GCPD in East End emergency response. Bruce saw it. He sent a message. Not through the papers, not through Lucius. He came himself. I was in the tower, reviewing updated Narrow's security schematics when Hammond entered. No warning, just a name. Wayne. I nodded once. Bring him up. He stepped through the door without ceremony. Dark coat, dark shirt, no tie, no mask, not the Bat, just Bruce Wayne. But the difference was thin. He didn't sit. He stood across the table, the city's light behind him like judgment. You're accelerating too fast, he said. I didn't look up. I signed the last form on the desk, then set the pen down. I'm on schedule. The Narrows isn't yours. Not yet. You're provoking chaos. No, I said, standing. I'm revealing it. There's a difference. You've baited gangs into violence and let the city think it's coincidence. Do you know how many children under 10 live in that district, Mr. Wayne? I asked. 15,428. Of them, nearly 800 have documented malnourishment. No power, no schooling, no medical access. He watched me still, quiet, calculating. I continued. I offer food, protection, and light. Penguin offers silence. The rest offer weapons. I'm not the problem. You're weaponizing the solution. No, I said. I'm showing what order looks like. And the firebomb. Not mine. But you let it happen. Yes. Why? So you'd come. The silence stretched, then broke. He stepped forward, hands loose at his sides. Not a threat, not a challenge, something else. I know what you are, Fisk. I know what you are too, I said evenly. His expression didn't change. You don't understand this city. I understand what it needs. He stared at me for a long time. Finally, he said, people are afraid of you. They should be. They're afraid of me too. That's why it works. Another silence. Then he said, I'll hold off GCPD for now, but the second you overstep. I won't. You already have. He turned, left, no more words. But he'd made his choice. He'd chosen not to stop me, which meant the Narrows was mine. Chapter 7, Salt in the Root. There was no announcement, no press release, no ceremonial ribbon. The Narrows wouldn't accept a grand gesture. It would reject it, tear it apart, mock the cameras and then burn the stage. So I made no speeches. I gave no orders in public. Instead, I moved in silence like an infection. We began with water. The city's utility lines were a patchwork of rusted metal, some of them laid before the Great Depression. Leaks fed directly into basements. Contaminated drinking supply, rot in the walls, rats on every floor. So I bought 3 purification rigs, portable, military grade, acquired from a failed contract bid in Central City. Deployed them overnight. No branding, No logos, just white tanks that smelled of bleach and steel. Clean water showed up in the Narrows before anyone knew it was coming. By morning, word had already spread. I received the call at 6:42 a.m. from one of my embedded logistics officers. His voice was tight, almost giddy. "They're lining up," he said. "5 blocks long. No fights, no interference. They're quiet." That quiet was more important than applause. I didn't respond, just nodded to myself and hung up. By day 2, we rolled out the food units. Nothing fancy. Vacuum-sealed packages, high protein, low prep, not subsidized, not charity, offered. Sold at 30% below grocery shelf prices, distributed from plain trucks, unmarked. We used a shell company registered as a local food redistribution initiative, approved last quarter under city pilot legislation. I made sure the permits passed clean. I had Hammond deliver every license to Bruce Wayne's office. Unsealed, transparent, a message. "We are legal, we are moving. You said you'd watch, so watch." The first gang to fold wasn't even one of the Narrows crews. They were out-of-district pushers from the borderline, trying to extend turf. We caught them shaking down a mother for transit fare. She was trying to get her kids to the new food truck site. The operatives didn't kill them. That wasn't the goal. They were intercepted, disarmed, zip-tied, and left in front of the nearest precinct house. Not as victims, as perpetrators. With video footage. They were booked under armed robbery, assault, and parole violation. The charges stuck. The message spread. You are not untouchable. The Narrows had forgotten that. Day 4. I walked the street myself. Not during peak hours, not surrounded by bodyguards, not in a convoy, just me, Hammond, and one driver who waited at the block's edge. I didn't speak to the press. I didn't speak to the locals unless they spoke to me. I didn't wear a disguise. I walked slowly, past burnt storefronts and dead neon, past children on cracked concrete playing with a bent hubcap and a plank, past women who hadn't known safety in years, and men who watched every shadow with suspicion they couldn't unlearn. I didn't smile. I didn't make promises. I observed. And what I saw was stillness. Not peace, not yet, but the kind of stillness that happens right before something changes forever. At night, I reviewed the reports. Our contractors had begun the first site foundation, 3 floors projected by month's end. I'd ordered dual-function units, residential above, retail below, clean access points, reinforced structure, no alleys behind the buildings, cut off escape routes, limit gang movement. Each apartment pre-fitted with reinforced doors and triple-bolt locks. Each unit keyed to a controlled leasing system. No cash rentals, no intermediaries, only verified ID, only traceable payment. It wasn't about tracking citizens. It was about closing the cracks where vermin survived. The food trucks were now on daily cycle. 3 zones, same time, same routes. Word had spread quickly. We offered referral incentives. Anyone who brought 3 new customers received a week's worth of staples, no questions asked. Every major gang had felt the shift. They were bleeding influence. What they used to buy with fear, I was now undercutting with stability. They couldn't compete. Hammond knocked softly that night. "Sir," he said, "we've had our first formal contact." I turned. From who? The 13th Street faction. They sent a message. They're ready to negotiate. I raised an eyebrow. Terms. They want non-interference on 1 block. In exchange, they'll stop pushing in the other 2 zones. I considered it. Do they control anything essential? Nothing we can't replace. Then reject the offer. He nodded. And send another message back. Tell them we'll reevaluate after they dissolve completely. Yes, sir. I leaned back. That was the first crack in the criminal lattice. The first admission that control was slipping. No one offered terms unless they'd already counted the cost of war and found it too high. I didn't need their cooperation. I needed their absence. On day 5, I received word from the community liaison we'd embedded through one of the housing repair grants. She'd been on site under the guise of an urban planning consultant. They're organizing cleanup, she said. Voluntarily, no payments, just organizing. That meant morale had shifted. That meant the people were beginning to own the order we'd given them. Which meant the gangs were finished. Because once a community accepts structure, they begin to reject the chaos that used to own them. That night, Hammond placed a report in front of me. "Sir," he said, "we have intel." He waited. I scanned the contents. Penguin again. He had pulled his support from the Narrows proxies, quietly. But the result was the same. The armed teenagers were disappearing. His product was vanishing from this half of the city, and 2 of his minor lieutenants had resigned from their posts and gone dark. He was retreating. Not publicly, but strategically. He was buying time. He thought it would change something. It wouldn't. The Narrows was changing. Not because I threatened it, but because I replaced its function. The gangs had power because they filled gaps, gave food, offered protection, imposed rules. Now those needs were met without blood, without extortion, without allegiance. There was no reason left to serve them. Only fear. And fear, when faced with structure, doesn't last. Chapter 8. No Room for Kings. The message came hand-delivered, not digital, not verbal. An envelope left on the windshield of one of our armored transport vans parked outside a distribution site in the Narrows. The courier didn't wait. He walked off before the driver even returned to the vehicle. Inside was a single card, matte black with no name, just a place, a time, no threat, no demands, no signature, but I knew who had sent it. Cobblepot didn't know how to stop gambling. The location was obvious. A closed lounge front near Midtown, long since abandoned, but still owned under one of Penguin's older shell holdings. It had once hosted low-tier political events, back when he still pretended to be respectable. The meeting time, midnight. I sat in silence for a moment after Hammond placed the card on my desk. "He's panicking," Hammond said, watching me. "No one's moving in his name anymore. Half his East End runners are switching sides. The Narrows are close to him. If he doesn't act now, he won't have leverage left." "He's not acting," I replied. "He's reacting. This isn't a negotiation, it's bait." "You think he's planning something?" "He's desperate," I said. "He wants a stage. He thinks a public kill makes him relevant again." Hammond was silent. Then, "You still going?" "Yes." He nodded once. "How do you want to play it?" Midnight came. I didn't bring an army. Just Anton and Hammond, and 6 men stationed 3 blocks out, eyes on every window and alley. No movement went unseen. No doors opened without a report. The lounge hadn't been touched in years. Paint peeling, dust thick. One glass door already shattered and propped closed with a rusted bar. The main hall smelled like stale smoke and dry mold. A single table sat in the center, one lamp above it, buzzing faintly. He sat alone. Of course, no coat this time. Just his 3-piece suit, a cigar burning low in one hand. His umbrella leaned against the chair leg, perfectly placed. Theatrics. I entered without speaking. Hammond stayed by the door. Anton took the far wall. Penguin didn't look up. "Funny thing," he said, voice soft. "This city always turns on you, sooner or later." I stepped forward. "Only if you let it." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe you just ran out of time and didn't notice." He looked up, eyes rimmed in red, not tired, inflamed. He hadn't slept. He gestured to the empty chair across the table. I didn't sit. He smirked. "Of course not. Big man like you doesn't sit until the world tells him it's allowed. I remained silent. I remember when this place was mine, he said. Every shipment, every payoff, every cop who turned their head. You think you built something new. You didn't. You just picked up where I left off. You built on blood, I said. I replaced it with rules. He spat. You replaced it with paper, permits and contracts and cold storage units. No soul, no loyalty, no cost. No victims, I said. He laughed. You think these people care about safety, about food lines and housing grants? No, they care about power, who scares who disappears first. And I know how this ends, Fisk. I stepped closer. No, you don't. He went quiet. I let the silence hang. Then I tilted my head slightly, just enough for him to see my eyes clearly. You came here to kill me, I said. He blinked. No one knew this location but you. The building is unmonitored. You removed your bodyguards. You dressed for ceremony, not survival. You invited me to a table with one exit, then had no drink waiting. You were trying to make a moment. You sent shooters, I said. 3 of them. One on the west fire escape, one in the alley behind the boiler stack, one posing as a drunk in the parking lot. I paused. They're already in custody. His expression broke, just a flicker. Then his hand twitched toward the umbrella. Anton moved before it touched his fingers. One movement. Clean. The umbrella was gone. Penguin's wrist pinned against the chair arm. He grunted, not in pain, in shock. I had a camera here the whole time, I said. Live feed, full audio. The moment you entered, your confession was recorded. He stared up at me, his mouth opened, then closed. You're done, Oswald. He didn't argue, not really, just leaned back, wheezing. You think this buys you peace, he said. You think Gotham wants what you're offering. No, I said, but it's what it needs. I nodded once. Hammond approached from behind and placed 2 steel cuffs around Penguin's wrists. He didn't resist. We handed him over to the GCPD. Not a call in the night, not a private drop. I called Commissioner Montoya personally, sent 2 verified agents with the footage, the signed transcript, and the umbrella, cleaned, sealed, and matched to 3 recorded weapons violations from past incidents. Montoya didn't ask questions. I told her it was over. She didn't argue. By morning, the papers ran the headline. COBBLEPOT, arrested on attempted murder charge. WILSON Fisk calls for civic accountability. The narrative was clear. Penguin tried to reassert power. I responded with law. He left the stage not in fire, but in cuffs. That mattered. The city didn't respect flame. It respected consequence. Penguin had been consequence. Now he was history. Chapter 9. The Man on the Platform. It was just after 10, when the armored car rolled to a stop at the edge of Monarch Plaza. Gotham's Civic Center stood in the belly of Midtown, halfway between the corporate gloss of the Wayne district and the last scarred blocks of the Old Quarter. Wide stone steps climbed to a platform raised above street level. In the distance, the sharp glass wedge of Wayne Tower cut across the skyline. This was not where power lived. It was where power introduced itself. The stage had been set by Wayne Industries, carefully, deliberately. Their logos were discreet, one on the corner of the press wall, another faintly etched onto the side of the lectern. The crowd hadn't gathered out of worship, not yet, but the plaza was full. That was what mattered. And Bruce wasn't here. Of course he was. He would never share a stage. That wasn't his role. But his name was everywhere. Wayne Industries, Urban Renewal Project. Guest address, Wilson Fisk. I stepped out of the vehicle with Hammond at my side. 2 security men stayed back. I walked the remaining stretch alone, up the concrete steps and toward the crowd. A press barrier lined the front row, reporters elbowed for position, camera lenses tilting up to track my frame. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't a celebrity. I wasn't the man they expected to see behind a microphone. But I was the one who built the microphone. I reached the podium. The wind moved slowly here. No tall buildings to strangle it. The sound system had been tuned in advance. Wayne's technicians, precise and invisible. I waited for silence. It didn't take long. I placed both hands on the edge of the lectern. No papers, no notes, just me. And then I began. Gotham has always lived in tension. The words landed hard, not poetic, not rhetorical. I spoke them as facts. Between rich and poor, between crime and law, between what this city is and what it refuses to become. I paused, scanned the crowd. I saw council members, clergy, factory supervisors, and beneath them the real Gotham, shop workers, teachers, civil engineers, garbage haulers, the people who made the system move. For decades, that tension has been managed by promises, promises of change, promises of progress. And when those promises fail, they are replaced by something else. I waited again, just long enough. Fear. Silence. Not tight, not defensive. Listening. I leaned forward slightly. For too long, fear has been the only thing that kept this city from devouring itself. Fear of gangs, fear of corruption, fear of walking home late, fear of what would happen if your children made one wrong turn. No emotion, just truth. But fear is not structure. Fear is not safety. Fear cannot raise a child or protect a home. It does not build cities. It destroys them piece by piece until only violence remains. Some of the reporters lowered their cameras, not because they were disinterested, but because they were focused. Recording wasn't enough. They wanted to understand. I let that settle. Then I said it. 2 nights ago, a man named Oswald Cobblepot, known to this city as Penguin, attempted to assassinate me. Gasps, murmurs, movement in the back rows. I didn't react. He invited me to a meeting. Armed men waited in the shadows. They were intercepted, disarmed, and turned over to Gotham PD. No blood was spilled. No bodies left behind. I held my ground. No fire, no chaos, just order. And then he was arrested, not by vigilantes, not by mob justice, but by law, because for the first time in this city's modern memory, crime met consequence. Now I saw it, the shift, the ripple. They weren't sure whether to applaud. They weren't used to hope being a fact. I kept going, voice low, measured. And I didn't do it alone. Eyes shifted. They were expecting more. I gave it to them. I was supported, quietly, directly, by Wayne Industries. Now it landed. I saw heads snap up, eyebrows lift. I spoke clearly, without pretense. Wayne Industries provided legal observation, technological review, and structural support to ensure that Cobblepot's arrest was clean, that it was provable, that it would hold. I took my hands off the lectern. I'm not interested in symbolism. This city doesn't need another speech. It needs peace. Predictable, measurable, safe peace. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it. I let every word fall where it would. This is the beginning. I paused one more time. We will not rebuild Gotham on dreams. We will rebuild it on justice, on systems that don't bend to threat, on rules that apply to everyone, from the street dealer to the men who think themselves untouchable. I stepped back. The applause didn't come right away, not because it wasn't felt, but because they were thinking, processing. Then it started, hesitant, then rolling forward, the kind of applause that didn't celebrate a man but agreed with him. That mattered more. Back inside the car, Hammond didn't speak for several minutes. He checked his watch, then his phone, then his watch again. Finally, "You know the press is going to spin this. Let them. Some of them will say it's propaganda, that we staged the whole thing. They're right to be cautious, but they'll still run the headline. Yes, Fisk and Wayne, unlikely partners in justice. Or Cobblepot falls, Gotham blinks. We pulled away from the plaza. I looked out at the buildings sliding past. The city hadn't changed, not yet. But it had heard. And the ones in the shadows were listening. Chapter 10. An invitation carved in ink. It was nearly midnight when I returned to the penthouse. The lights were already on. Not all of them, just the entryway, the long overhead along the hallway, and the recessed fixtures above the dining table. Subtle, soft, exactly as I had left them. Nothing seemed out of place. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry. The lock hadn't been triggered. But I knew immediately. Someone had been here. I didn't tense. I didn't reach for a weapon. That wasn't how you survived. The kind of men who killed you never needed to break things to get close. They left no scuff marks. They left messages. And sure enough, the message was waiting. I stepped into the living space. The room was silent except for the hum of the city outside. The penthouse sat 35 stories above Midtown, walls of soundproof glass surrounding me in stillness. The note sat alone on the dining table, cream-colored paper, folded once, written in green ink. No envelope. No signature. Just a riddle. I picked it up, read it once. I build no walls, yet men are trapped inside me. I live in minds, but never speak. You stand upon me now. But if you fall into me, you'll die. I smiled. Not broadly, not with amusement, but with something cold and honest beneath the surface. Riddler. He'd made his introduction, and in doing so, he'd answered a question I hadn't even asked yet. Gotham was watching, and its monsters were restless. I poured a glass of water, sat at the dining table with the note beside me. The riddle wasn't complicated, not really, not in structure. The cadence was clean, intentional. It wanted to be solved. Like all of his work, it was arrogant, designed to lead the reader to a conclusion just barely outside their reach, just difficult enough to feel earned. I took another sip, closed my eyes. I build no walls, yet men are trapped inside me. A trap without a physical form, mental, symbolic. I live in minds, but never speak. An idea or a perception. You stand upon me now. Geographic, conceptual, both. But if you fall into me, you'll die. I opened my eyes. Fear, I said out loud. The answer was fear. It made sense. It aligned. It was deliberate. But it wasn't just the answer that mattered. It was the context. He had been watching the rally. That much was clear, maybe in person, maybe through a feed, maybe with his own network of eyes in the crowd. But he had heard the speech. He had listened when I said Gotham would no longer be ruled by fear. And he took it personally. Of course he did. Riddler didn't crave wealth. He craved attention, validation, proof that he was still the most intelligent creature in the room. My arrival had unbalanced him. The city had begun to organize around something new, me. Structure was returning. Systems were being enforced. Predictability was becoming possible. He hated that, because a world that functioned without chaos had no room for riddles. I rose slowly, still holding the note. Check the cameras, I said aloud. Within seconds, Hammond's voice buzzed through the intercom from the security wing. He never slept during deployment windows. Already pulled them, sir. No breach. External. Perimeter clean. Internal elevators showed no access logs beyond your return. No motion triggers. No prints. Then he used a bypass. Yes, and he erased it on the way out. Of course he had. Riddler didn't leave calling cards for fun. He left them to prove he was already ahead, that he could reach you even when no one else could. Start filtering all internal communications. Keyword flags, puzzles, riddles, keys, gates, enigmas, anything indicative of coded messages. Already underway. I nodded. Good. Hammond was never behind. Do we respond? He asked. No, not yet. You think it's just a warning? No, I said. It's a test. An hour later, I was in the operations room on the lower floor. The monitors were quiet, nothing in the narrows, no movement from Penguin's old networks, no chatter from GCPD beyond standard reports, but I wasn't looking for activity. I was looking for interruption. Riddler didn't care about territory. He didn't run drugs or guns or rackets. He wasn't trying to reclaim turf from Penguin or rebuild Falcon's networks. What he wanted was to prove that Gotham's order was a lie, that behind every system, every plan, there was still chaos. He didn't attack the people in charge. He attacked the belief that control existed. And I had become that belief. I called Anton. He answered without a greeting. Deploy the watchers to every substation, municipal utility, and press terminal in the lower city. Focus on junction points that affect hospital grids and flood systems. If Riddler's going to make a move, he'll do it in code and in public. Yes, sir. Disguise them as contractors. I don't want GCPD spooked. I want this man to think he's invisible until he's already in the net. Understood. Back upstairs, I placed the riddle on the desk and looked at it one more time. He wanted me rattled, but all he had done was engage me. This wasn't fear. This was challenge. And I thrived on challenge. Because I didn't kill men in alleys. I dismantled them in silence, piece by piece, until they no longer existed in the system. Riddler thought he was proving that fear still ruled Gotham. But he'd forgotten something. I am not Gotham. Chapter 11, Conversation over Glass. It was nearly 3 in the morning when the elevator stopped without a sound. No alert, no ping, no intercom call from security, just a soft click, the heavy interior locks disengaging, the doors parting open into the soft-lit stillness of my private floor. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Only one man in Gotham could move that quietly at this hour, through a building fortified like a federal vault, and do it without tripping a single alarm. He stepped forward slowly, dressed in black, a high-collared coat, no cape, no mask, just the man, not the myth. Wayne, I said without looking. I stood by the window, staring out at the cityscape. The skyline blinked faintly in the distance, neon muted by fog. Did you enjoy the show? His voice was low, flat, civil, but not friendly. He crossed the room without invitation and stood behind me, near the center of the space, flanked by the subtle line of recessed floor lights. I read the riddle, he said. I assumed you would. It wasn't meant for me. No, I said, but you recognized the signature. He didn't respond. I turned to face him. Bruce Wayne looked like a man who had forgotten how to blink. His jaw was set, his posture relaxed but engineered, like every inch of him was designed to absorb and measure whatever threat the room contained. But there was no threat here, not between us. Just calculus. He wants attention, Bruce said. You gave it to him. I raised an eyebrow. I haven't said a word to the press. You answered him, Bruce said, by staying quiet. You left the rally, didn't mention it, and walked into your penthouse without changing your routine. Isn't that how you handle people like him? That's how I handle them, he said. You're not me. A pause. Then you're visible. I nodded once. He was right, but that had never been the point. You think this is my mistake? I asked. Bruce crossed the room to the table where the riddle still sat, unfolded, placed precisely in the center like an artifact in a gallery. He picked it up, turned it once in his hands, and set it back down. No, he said, I think it's your responsibility. He wasn't here to argue. He wasn't here to threaten. Not tonight. He was here to see whether I had anticipated this, whether I understood what it meant to be the new weight under Gotham's sky. "You're in the center of this now," he continued. "You arrested Cobblepot. You claimed part of the Narrows. You're coordinating with the city. The moment you took that podium, every eye in this city changed direction." He moved away from the table and walked toward the window I'd just vacated. "He sees you as a replacement." "For what?" "For chaos," Bruce said quietly. I didn't answer, because he was right again. "Cobblepot wasn't a threat to the system," Bruce went on. "He was the system, predictable, greedy, territorial. That's easy to control. Riddler's different." "I know." "Then act like it." I moved toward the chair, lowered myself slowly, deliberately. "You came here to demand something, Bruce. Ask it." He turned. "I want to know what you intend to do." I looked at him evenly. My voice didn't shift. "I intend to capture him, like I did Penguin." He didn't move, but something in his face hardened. Not surprise, not disbelief, just pressure, testing the frame. "Riddler isn't Penguin. You can't buy your way into his crew. You can't dismantle him with city permits and neighborhood grants. He doesn't want money. He wants a message. And I'll give him one." His gaze narrowed. "You think you can handle him alone?" "No," I said calmly. "I think I can handle him differently." "You think you can outsmart him?" "I don't need to," I said. "I only need to make him believe he's already lost." That hung in the air for a moment, not as arrogance, but as truth. Bruce knew what I meant. He understood that the Riddler didn't break because you cornered him. He broke because you solved his puzzle before it made sense to anyone else. "You don't know what he'll do," Bruce said. "He's watching your sites, your workers. He won't go after you directly." "He already has." That was a warning. I nodded. "Yes, and now I'll answer." Bruce looked down at the riddle again. He didn't reach for it this time. "Don't let your pride put lives in danger," he said. "This isn't pride," I said. "It's design. Riddler wants to be heard, so I'll hear him. And when I do, when I understand the rules of his game, I'll take it from him." He didn't speak for a long time. Then he stepped back toward the elevator. At the threshold, he turned one last time. "If you get this wrong," he said, "you'll lose the public. You'll lose the people who want to believe in you. You're not a hero, Fisk. You never will be. And if you fail even once, no one will forgive it." I stood. "No one should." He stared at me, eyes hard. Then he was gone. The elevator closed without a sound. The riddle sat on the table, still folded, still open, still waiting. Chapter 12. Laughter in the Static. It began at 5:04 p.m. Rush hour, pedestrian traffic at its highest, subways full, sidewalks flooded, the city on its most vulnerable pulse, not vulnerable from attack, but from interruption. I was still in the operations room, reviewing the logistics routes for the Narrows' next shipment cycle. The team had been tracking mild disruptions, traffic reroutes, sudden surge pricing on utility costs, unexplained delays in sanitation pickups. Riddler's fingerprint was soft, but we could see it. Noise at the edges of signal. Then every screen in the room blinked. Once. Then again. Then they went black. 3 seconds of silence. And then static. A shrill, hissing feed swept through the speaker system. Every channel, every line, every monitor. Every piece of hardware that could broadcast sound was suddenly pulsing with white noise. Then the voice. Filtered, mechanical, faintly amused. "Let's play a game, Gotham." I stood without speaking. Hammond turned. Anton was already pressing keys. Nothing worked. The voice crackled again. "I've hidden 6 triggers across your beautiful little wasteland, each one built into a puzzle. Solve the puzzle, disarm the trigger. Simple. My jaw locked. My mind was already working, not with fear, with structure. But here's the trick. I'm not going to tell you where they are. The screens lit up again, one by one, until the entire wall glowed with green code. Numbers, images, maps. A city grid. But distorted, sections blacked out, street names altered, transit lines redirected. It was Gotham, not exactly. It was his version. His maze. The voice continued. For every 15 minutes you waste, someone will die. Not a metaphor, not a game, not this time. You've impressed me, Mr. Fisk. Let's see if you can keep doing it with people's lives on the line. The screens cut to static again. Then silence. One red timer appeared. 14:59. I turned to Hammond. Shut down the secure line. We're already offline. Don't reconnect it, not yet. Anton was watching me. You think this is real? Yes, I said. It's too early in his cycle for bluffs. Cycle. He escalates in stages. It's predictable. Annoyance, disruption, attention, theater, violence. The broadcast is the theater. The bombs are real. Anton nodded once. Then we need to find the first one. Pull the grid. His version or ours. Both, overlay them. Look for anomalies. Hammond leaned in. Sir, he said, he altered names. We won't be able to map it perfectly. I stared at the screen, then pointed. Right there, 5th and Cranmore. He renamed it to 3 Lies Crossing. So, there's no lie in that intersection, I said. No history, no scandal. But 2 blocks down, Walgrave and 42nd, was where Commissioner O'Hara covered up the housing demolitions 5 years ago. Anton was already on it. Confirmed. That corner was never reported in the official zoning change. It matches the shape of the one on the riddle grid. Dispatch a team, I said. No sirens, no uniforms, approach on foot. Look for manhole covers, electrical junctions, package placements, anything unusual. Timer 11:02. The first device was found beneath a power relay box. Compact, circular, laced with wires and a motion sensor. One wrong move and it would have blown. But it wasn't locked by a mechanism. It was locked by a question. Hammond read it off his phone as he relayed it to me. What always runs but never moves, can be held but never touched, kills the strongest and yet is weightless. I didn't hesitate. Time. Anton transmitted the word through the secure uplink to the signal port on the relay. The light turned green. The bomb clicked once. Disarmed. Timer reset, 14:59. 5 more remained. But now we knew how the game worked. I stepped closer to the screens. One by one, I studied the distorted map. The second location used a landmark he renamed Tears Without Rain. That was Miller Park, where the city held a vigil after the Monarch chemical fire. No rain for weeks, people crying on camera. The images had been used in a dozen smear campaigns. I sent a team. They found the second device inside a drainage tunnel below the fountain. The riddle this time was longer. I am in every mirror but never reflected. I hide behind eyes and grow with silence. I have no voice, but when I speak, cities burn. I didn't answer right away. I read it twice, 3 times. Then it came. Hatred. Anton transmitted it. Click. Disarmed. 14:59. The third puzzle took longer. This one was hidden in an abandoned light rail station. The station that never stops. A closed depot that had been used for storage before the city forgot it existed. It took nearly the entire 15 minutes to reach it. The riddle was cruel. You see me once in birth, twice in death. I can end a sentence and begin war. I'm always close but never caught. A trap designed to bait the mind. Birth, death, language, proximity. Then I saw it. The letter H. One in birth, two in death, ends a sentence, H as in hush. Begins hell, hurt, hunger, hate. Anton transmitted it. Disarmed. The fourth and fifth came faster. One under a Wayne Foundation shelter, Riddler mocking the Alliance. Another buried in the rooftop of an old courthouse, long since condemned. Both disarmed, both just seconds before the timer ran down. Sixth location, final. But there was no Riddle this time. Only a name. Wilson Fisk. And a location, my own building. I was already on my feet. No time to wait. Elevator down to sub-level 3, our generator room. We found the box wired behind the main voltage converter. Sophisticated, not homemade, professional grade with a remote backup trigger. He had placed it here days ago. The screen on the device showed a simple sentence. What is worth more than control, but shatters the moment you name it? I stared at it. It was not just a riddle, it was a threat and a message. This wasn't for Gotham, this was for me. He was asking what I cared about more than structure, and warning me what it would cost to say it out loud. I spoke the answer. Trust. Click. Green light. By midnight the city was still. No screams, no explosions, no funerals. No thanks. But I didn't need them, because I had answered him. And I had one. Chapter 13, an answer he hated. The message came in the early hours. Not a broadcast, not a riddle, no mass theater or spectacle, just a phone call. A direct line, encrypted, silent. The number had no origin point. It rang once, never twice. I didn't hesitate. I answered. The voice that greeted me was low, almost curious, not filtered through static this time, not disguised with synthetic tones or altered inflection. It was him. You cheated. There was no introduction, no greeting, just accusation. I said nothing, let him speak. You cheated, Fisk, he said again. I built something elegant, beautiful, every line structured, every riddle perfect. But you didn't solve them, not the way you were meant to. He sounded calmer than I expected. That unnerved me. Men like Riddler didn't do calm when they lost. They unraveled. You stole the answers, he hissed. You used systems, data, surveillance. You dissected the puzzle like an animal. You didn't feel it. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city lights flicker past the glass. Your mistake, I said, was thinking it mattered how I won. Silence. It stretched. Then you're not clever, Fisk. You're not a thinker. You're a butcher. A hammer wrapped in a suit. You're angry because the game ended before you got to make your point. I was the point. There it was, the crack, the shift in the voice, not frustration, wounded pride. You think order is the answer, he continued. You think you can fix Gotham with food trucks and housing permits. You're just another man in a tower, waiting for someone smarter to tear it all down. Then try. He paused. I heard something shift in the background, not movement, breathing. Another presence in the room with him, wherever he was. A camera, a microphone, a laptop, didn't matter. I gave this city a gift, he said. I showed them how fragile you are, how easily I reached you. I put a bomb in your home. I named you. And still you lost. That stopped him. Then, quietly, you didn't solve that last riddle. I didn't answer. You knew the answer, he said, but not because you understood it. You recognized it, because you've been manipulating it from the start. Trust, I said flatly. That wasn't the riddle, he whispered. That was the warning. I stood. If you called to threaten me, you're wasting time. If you called to whine, you've already done more damage to your legacy than I could ever inflict. A sharp inhale, then, I want a rematch. No, you don't get to refuse me. I already have. You don't understand what you've done, he snapped. You didn't win, you denied me. I removed your relevance, I said. Not your threat, that'll come next. A pause. Then, with forced calm, you think you're a wall, but you're just a mask. Sooner or later, someone's going to pull it off, and when they do, they'll see the truth. I let the silence stretch. Then, try again, Riddler, one more time. But understand this, next time I won't disarm your bombs. The line went dead. Hammond was already in the control room when I entered. He didn't ask questions. He had seen the call log. Where do we start? He asked. Find his signal origin. Not from the phone. He wouldn't use anything traceable. I want the location where the words were recorded. Copy that. And Anton. Already putting men on the sublayer network. Looking for camera feeds, facial rec, anything we can scrape. Good. I returned to the upper floor just after 4 a.m. The riddle was still on the table. I hadn't moved it. The ink hadn't faded. Trust, I repeated quietly. He was right. I hadn't solved that one. Not really. I'd recognized it, because I had built everything on it. Wayne. Hammond. My field teams. And the city. Gotham trusted me now, more than it ever had anyone who didn't wear a mask. That made me dangerous, not because I was powerful. Because I was believed. That was the truth Riddler couldn't tolerate. The system hadn't failed. It had evolved. And now it had outgrown men like him. Chapter 14. A city that watches its children. The sun hadn't fully risen when the first call came in. Hammond entered the room without knocking. That wasn't unusual anymore. We had passed beyond formality. He held a printout in his hand, thick matte stock, the kind they use in public schools when the photocopier is dying and no one has been paid to replace it. His face was tight. Sir, he said, we've received something. I looked up from the desk. The operations room was quiet. The lights hadn't even adjusted to full brightness yet. Early dawn hours always felt thinner, like the city hadn't finished deciding what kind of day it wanted to be. He placed the paper in front of me. I read the top line. To those who ask and never answer. To those who know but never speak. To those who build without a question. Can you protect what cannot think? The lines were printed in green ink. Jet printer, clean margins, no signature, no mark. But I already knew. We both did. Riddler. Hammond stood still. Where? I asked. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, kindergarten, South Narrows. Building's a converted shipping depot, been running 5 years, privately funded with Wayne infrastructure grants. Any injuries? No. Children. All present, no threat. Who found it? Teacher, name, Tasha Melgrove, 28. Background checks out. She found the note taped to the inside of a janitorial cabinet near the back stairwell. How many children walk past it? None. It's not part of the class routes. That's the part that worries me. I stared at the paper again. The rhythm, the placement of each line, the cadence of accusation. This wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. He had shifted the field, again. By 8:13 a.m., we had confirmed 4 more sites. All different, all small. Elementary school in Old Town. Community after-school center in Bristol Hill. A private tutoring pod in the basement of a mid-income housing block in Park Row. And a reading clinic operated by an NGO out of East End. Each location received the same note, word for word. Each discovered it in a different place. Under a teacher's desk, inside a supply closet, attached to the underside of a child's reading mat. No explosive devices, no chemicals, no gas traps, no wires. Just paper. That didn't make it harmless. That made it worse. Because every site had been entered. Every location had been studied, surveyed, breached, undetected, timed between cleaning shifts, night security rotations, and weekend closures. Not carelessness. Design. I stood in the map room just before 9, watching the pins appear one after the other. Anton circled the table slowly. Hammond stood to my left, flipping through files as the photos arrived from each site. The paper was the same in all of them, same printer, same folds. Even the placement was consistent, centered, flat, with the top edge precisely aligned to the space it was found in. He wanted it read, not discovered. And he wanted it read by us. Anton spoke first. He's not trying to kill kids. No, I said. He's trying to test me. He's escalating, Hammond added. Not in violence, in stakes. I nodded once. He lost the citywide riddle, I said. But that wasn't the game. That was the opening act. This is the test. Anton's brow furrowed. Why children? Because they can't defend themselves, I said. They can't solve riddles. They can't decode signals. They can't disarm bombs. They rely entirely on systems, on structure. On you, Hammond said quietly. Yes. At 9:22 a.m., Bruce Wayne called. His voice was flat, controlled, but tighter than before. No performance this time, just reality. You saw it. I've seen 5 so far. There are 7. How do you know? I checked our NGO sites after the first 2. My teams found 2 more. One at a language center in the Diamond District. One at a sleep-in program near the waterfront. That brought the total to 7. 7 messages. 7 sites. 7 riddles written not as puzzles, but as accusations. Bruce didn't say anything else. I heard him breathing. You think he'll strike? I asked. I think he wants the threat of it to be more effective than the act. He's winning public perception. Yes. How long before the press starts calling these warnings? It's already happening. I paused. Then he's attacking structure. No, Bruce said. He's attacking legitimacy. He wants people to think their children aren't safe, even when they are. He wants them to question what's safe. And once that question starts, it never stops. I didn't argue. I'd already seen it happen in other cities. You didn't need to drop a bomb. You just needed to make people look for one. Fear would do the rest. By noon, I made the decision. We increased our contractor presence around every educational facility linked to our redevelopment zones. No uniforms, no weapons displayed, but visible, intentional. We set up medical drop boxes outside the buildings, floodlights positioned over entryways, added anonymous reporting numbers on every window. Visible safety. Nothing hidden, no shadow plays, no false calm. This was not the time for quiet assurance. This was a declaration. And Riddler would feel it. By mid-afternoon, Wayne-Tech sent an encrypted packet. Lucius Fox had compiled a signal log. 4 of the notes had been printed on a modified HP model used by city contractors. 2 of the remaining had come from commercial stations in Wayne-sponsored libraries. Only 1 hadn't been traceable at all. That 1 worried me the most. He was getting smarter. Less theatrical, more surgical. The pattern was clear. He wanted to see how far he could go before I broke the illusion of control. And he wanted to see it in the eyes of the public. By nightfall, GNN ran their first segment. Children targeted by mysterious riddles, copycat or threat. I watched the clip from the penthouse. The anchor's voice was perfectly calibrated, concerned but restrained. The footage showed the reading center in East End, flashing police lights in the background, and then a photo of the note. The words blurred, but the public would recognize the formatting, the ink, the intent. I called Hammond. Have Anton pull all security footage from the Park Row tutoring pod, I said. I want a full breakdown of every entry in the last 72 hours. Filter for anyone wearing green, anything with gloves, anything with exact stride cadence. Already compiling. And Hammond, I said, leak a copy of the surveillance image, the back of a coat, half a shoe, anything. To the press. No, to the public. He hesitated. Why? Because I want him to know that I'm not hiding anymore. The next morning, I walked through one of the buildings myself. No announcement, no press. Just me, Hammond, 2 aides. I wore no suit, no tie, just a long black coat and gloves. I moved through the hallways slowly. The children were in session. Their voices reached me in fragments. Laughter, reading exercises, occasional mutters of confusion. Teachers guiding quietly. Life, normal life. The kind that Riddler wanted to fracture. At the end of the hall, I saw a group of 7-year-olds painting. One boy had drawn a tower, but not like the ones in Gotham's skyline. It was wide, square, thick walls and no windows, just a black rectangle in the center. I paused beside him. What is it? I asked. He looked up, didn't know who I was. That was good. It's a building. Why's it have no windows? So the bad guys can't see who's inside. I nodded. He dipped his brush again and added a figure to the side. A man in front of the tower, tall, round shoulders. Who's that? He didn't answer for a second. Then, that's the guy who stops the questions. I looked down at the paper. The way he had drawn the head was too round, the arms too wide. But I knew who it was. Riddler would keep pushing. I knew that now. This wasn't about puzzles. This was about narrative. He didn't want to kill. He wanted the city to start asking whether I could stop it. And the only way to answer that was not with threat, but with presence, with structure that held under scrutiny, with children who could walk to school the next day and laugh again. That night, he left a new message. No riddle. Just one line. Still think you're winning. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. Not yet. Chapter 15. The Question Without Permission. The first report came at 7:19 a.m. It was from a school in Old Town, same facility as the second Riddle incident from the week before. Low cost, high density. A modified warehouse divided into temporary learning pods with retractable dividers, thin insulation, and city-issued chalkboards with cracked frames. A temporary school in every sense of the word. Except the children were permanent. I was in the middle of reviewing site projections when the call came through. Hammond didn't pass it to an assistant. He patched it directly into my earpiece. Sir, he said, voice tight, we have a new incident. I stood slowly. The steel of my chair creaked under my weight. Same location. Yes, but not the same method. He didn't leave a note. What then? It was a direct message, personal. Go on. He hesitated. The target was a child. I arrived at the school 26 minutes later. No press, no police tape, no sirens, not yet. The city didn't know. Inside, the staff was waiting, tight-faced, pale. Nobody was crying, yet, but the silence that had taken hold was thicker than grief. It was fear made visible. A woman in her 50s stood near the entrance, hands shaking slightly. Her name tag read Principal Laurel. She greeted me without pleasantries. That was appropriate. We found it this morning, just after first bell, a note inside a student's book bag. Who found it? One of the aides. The child didn't know it was there. Where's the child now? Safe in the counseling room. We haven't told her anything. I nodded. She led me down the hall. The floor tiles were worn clean in the middle, too many years of traffic, not enough funds to replace them. She opened the office door slowly. The note was laid out on the table. I stepped inside alone. Hammond waited at the door. I looked at it. It wasn't folded. It wasn't even hidden. It had been slipped into a pink notebook, tucked between two arithmetic worksheets. The child had almost turned the page in front of her entire class. I read it. Hello, Leela. I hear you love questions. Here's one. If the man who says he keeps you safe doesn't know I'm here, who keeps him safe? No signature. No puzzle. No riddle. Just a name. The girl's name. And mine. I stood over the paper for a long time. Not in shock. In calculation. He had broken the boundary. There was no misunderstanding anymore. No abstraction. He hadn't just wanted to shake the structure. He wanted to prove it was penetrable. He hadn't hurt Leela, not physically, not yet. But he had trespassed. Into innocence. Into safety. He had left his fingerprint, not in ink, but in doubt. And he had done it through her. I called Bruce at 8:13 a.m. He answered before the second ring. You saw it, I said. I heard. He used a child's name. There was a pause. He's escalating. Not to violence, to symbolism. I know, Bruce said. I need your systems. You already have them. No, I said. I need something more. A full dataset of your educational vendor networks. Anyone who has printed material in the last 10 days. All badge scans. All terminal logins. I want to know if anyone has been inside a Wayne Grant-funded facility without registering. I'll send it. And Bruce. What? If you were waiting for a reason to step in, this is it. There was a beat of silence. Then, I'll meet you in the Narrows tonight. By midday, the story had broken. We hadn't leaked it, but the staff had reported it through the official safety protocols, mandatory by city law. That report had been flagged by an open-source monitoring tool used by freelance journalists. The headline came just after noon. Criminal leaves note for Gotham student, new threat or psychological war. The language was neutral, the intent was not. By 1:07 p.m., it was trending. By 1:24, 3 council members had issued statements of concern. By 1:50, I was called by the mayor's office. Not the mayor, his chief of staff. They wanted assurance, not facts, not analysis. Assurance. I gave it. And then I turned off my phone. At 3:40 p.m., I arrived back at the penthouse. I didn't go to the operations room. I went to the desk. The original riddles were still there, neatly stacked. The paper from the child's notebook sat beside them now. There was no poetry in this one, no rhythm, no charm. Just violation. He wanted me angry. He wanted to see if I'd lose composure. If I'd blink, if I'd pull back the mask of order and show something reactive. He wanted proof that I was no different than the others. I wouldn't give it to him. That night, Bruce arrived without noise. No costume, no pretenses. Just him, black coat, collar turned up, eyes sharp. He stood in the middle of the operations room as Anton and Hammond watched from the far wall. We were past introductions now. I handed him the note. He read it once. Set it down. I've already run the handwriting against our past samples, he said. It's his. No intermediaries, no proxies. Then he's alone. No, he's never alone. He works in mirrors, makes people reflect what he needs. I sat slowly. Bruce remained standing. He chose her, I said, at random. No, Bruce said. Her father was injured on a construction site last year. Sued the city. Lost. But the case got buried in some housing data your team used for the Narrows blueprint. That paperwork was shared in a batch transmission with Wayne Infrastructure. You think he combed the data? I think he lives in it. I said nothing. Then he wants me to respond emotionally. He wants you to make a mistake. He's going to escalate again. Yes. We stood there. Quiet. Then Bruce said, if he ever touches a child, I end this, without debate. I'm already there. That night, I walked past Leela's school alone. No bodyguards. No entourage. No press. Just presence. The cameras saw me. That was the point. Riddler would see me too. And he would know. I wasn't answering his riddle. I was responding to the girl who never asked for one.